Information is coming in of an emergency off the Somerset coast. A ship is floundering and conditions at sea are so bad that the lifeboat can't be launched from Lynmouth. As a result, local men are dragging the lifeboat across the steepest hills in the West Country to Porlock, 14 miles away, where they should be able to put to sea.
It was one of the most remarkable rescue operations in the history of the lifeboat service, and today, exactly 100 years on, they've been reenacting it.
It was cold, windy and wet in Lynmouth early this morning, but that's exactly what it was 100 years ago today.
15 souls on a crippled cargo ship couldn't survive the storm. Unable to launch from Lynmouth, the villagers dragged their lifeboat 14 miles across Exmoor to reach her.
The coxswain of the Lynmouth Lifeboat, Jack Crocombe, made a momentous decision.
There's a vessel in distress out there, the Porlock.
The seas were so horrific here. The waves were breaking over the Rhenish Tower behind us, and it was impossible to launch anything at Lynmouth, but the weather at Porlock behind the hill was a little bit easier, and they felt they could launch there.
We launch from Porlock Weir.
He decided to take the Lynmouth lifeboat, the Louisa, on a 15-mile journey through the night to go to the aid of a cargo ship drifting in force 8 gales in the Bristol Channel. Using a boat borrowed from a museum on the Isle of Wight and a team of cart horses, 50 volunteers today reenacted that journey. Hundreds of people from the southwest and further afield put up with the poor conditions to watch the team pull out of Lynmouth.
It's wonderful. I think it's super. Yeah, it's worth coming out in this weather.
I think they would have been very pleased to think that, you know, their efforts had been rewarded by such a turnout. It's lovely, isn't it?
We've been talking about it for several days, and they're fascinated. We've been looking at old records and so on, and finding out lots about it. And I think we've all enjoyed finding out about it.
The reenactment kept closely to the original script, although for safety reasons, a tractor had to be used in places. A century ago, the horses and crew got to the top of Countisbury Hill, a 1 in 4 climb. But the weather was so bad that only the 13-man crew and the 7-man launching party continued through the night. The weather was nearly as bad on Exmoor today, as the reenactment team made their way towards Porlock.
A century ago, every able-bodied villager mustered to inch the lifeboat 1,000 feet uphill to the moors. Today, 60 local men and 4 working horses had a taste of what their ancestors had faced, bending to their task in driving rain.
Unlike their predecessors, however, they did benefit from a brief respite from their exertions halfway to their destination.
Just keep going, basically. It's going to get hard as we get up to Colburn up there, because there's quite a hill coming up, and you've got to take the weight off the horse. But it's bad enough walking, but when you've got to pull a bit as well, it's quite hard.
They're about 2/3 of the way through now, and the weather's brightened up considerably. Very different from 100 years ago, when they set off across Exmoor, buffeted by gale-force winds all the way. Today's volunteers also benefited from modern roads. A century ago, the lifeboat crew at one point had to drag the Louisa on skids because there wasn't enough room between the houses for boat and carriage.
I think the people that are down here in Porlock Weir this afternoon to welcome us is evidence of the commitment that the villagers put behind this celebration.
The 3.5-ton lifeboat, identical to Lynmouth's own, reached Porlock Weir on time with some mechanical assistance. It was here that Crocombe's crew summoned their last reserves of energy to stage a successful rescue.
This marked the end of today's journey, but that wasn't the end for the crew of 1899. They then helped to escort the stricken cargo ship to South Wales, something today's volunteers would find it even more difficult to emulate.
They had to do it in the dark. Of course, they had no lights or anything, or no flashlights like they have today, you see. And the old lanterns that blew out every time they tried to do anything.
Stamina which this 20th century community found difficult to imagine.
It was bad across the top of the moor, but yeah, it's been enjoyable, but it doesn't bear anything to what they did years ago.
A new painting will help Lynmouth pass on its modest moment. Tonight's celebrations will no doubt include a toast to the man whose leadership inspired his village to heroism. Robert Hall, BBC News, North Devon.
Philip Lote, BBC News West, Porlock.
Incredible story of determination and courage there.
And extraordinary the work that lifeboat people do today.